which is Eetu Karvonen. He had been consistently helping the UCSSC on coaching education for many times already, and we would like to give the floor none other than the Finland national coach, Coach Eetu Karvonen.
And I'm here
Thank
to
you.
talk about the development of Olympians, which obviously is quite of a broad topic. But I think I will approach it from kind of a principle based view on how the pathway for a kid who starts swimming at age 5 or 7 or 9 years old in the next 10 years, what she or he should do to become as elite as possible in swimming, and what we should do and how we should train them as coaches. And again, there's a small introduction on me. I used to be a swimmer, then I became a coach in the early 2000s. And I coached in the US for a few years, and then I became the head coach of Arab Emirates, and then later for Finland. And actually, I'm not the head coach of Finland anymore. I stopped about half a year ago and just concentrated on actual real coaching of a club here in Finland, Pori. And like I said, our objectives today is to really understand the long-term athletic development of athletes, of providing the right kind of training at the right age and seeing the individuality in all of the swimmers to make them develop as best as we can. And for me, the foundational question, because I coach age group athletes, I coach junior athletes, I coach senior athletes, and then I actually coach a few Olympians right now. And my question for myself, and if I were a head coach of a big club that had separate coaches for all those levels, is always that, okay, what is the coach on the next level wanting to see? So if I'm teaching kids to swim, okay, I have to teach them in a way that it's super easy for the age group coaches to take them forward. And then the age group coach should always have like this foundational thought, okay, what do I need to do to make these athletes ready for a junior coach, and so forth and so forth. And this is also the discussion on what actually limits the performance, because we all see the programs of the elites, programs of Leon Marchand or Summer McIntosh or something like this. But that's obviously not the type of training we should hold for our 11 years old. We have to think, okay, what do I need to do at this age bracket to make it possible for them to train like the champions when they're actually adults? And quite clearly, the reason for this is that it will take a long time to actually develop an elite athlete. So usually it will take more than 10 years. If you happen to get some super talented athletes, it might take a little less, or it might even take more. And you always have to know what is the next step forward. And if you use all of your cards, all of your training knowledge at the early stages, then you have nothing left. And of course, if you think about swimming, you basically have three things that you're always training. It's your technique, your skills, and those have to be elite to be the best in the world. And it will take years and years and years to develop those skills. Then you have your basic, what I call capacities, which is endurance, speed, strength, but that's not really yet racing. Then the last one is, okay, how can I utilize my skills? How can I utilize my physiological qualities the best I can in the event that I'm actually swimming? And we also kind of have to recognize what talent is. So when we see a 20-year-old Leon Marchand, again, that's a good example always, we think that there's something inherently different in that person, that they're just talented. But what we don't see is obviously the work that they have put in for the last 10 years. And probably in this example, the work has been quite a good quality to make him swim world records and all of that. But what we're really looking for is obviously the right body. You have to be tall enough. You have to have the right levers in your arms, etc. But then also you have to either born, but I think it's more gained through the right type of training, you have to gain the ability to learn fast and to adapt fast. And this is what it's about. The first few years of your swimming career or your swimmer's career should be for them to create the base and the understanding of how to improve their own performance. Okay, how to actually learn the techniques fast, understand the coach, and then have the physiological capacities that when you really start to train, you actually progress quite fast. And again, that only comes when they are fully mature. They're basically adults. And the breakthrough performance comes from these two kind of different types of training. You have the training to become elite level in those basic foundational stuff, and then once you're an adult, the real improvements at that point come through really, really hard, intense, and specific practice. But you always have to remember that if you don't have the base, if you don't have the capacity, you have nothing to utilize. So this is the part that really is most of our discussion today because it's super important. We will just go through each phase that at least I think these are the phases of learning and developing as an athlete. And it all starts obviously from your learn to swim program. So the first moment the athletes come to you or any other coach in your program, and the goal is to learn how to swim the most effective way and also again learn how to learn. And that is based on actually training the basic motor skills, and those are super hard to compensate later. Maybe you can do that when you're age 14 or 15, but it will be so slow that you won't ever have the opportunity to actually start training. So the best place, the window of opportunity to learn how to swim, and we always have to remember that in 10 years or 12 years, the swimming techniques will change. The swimmers who are now starting have to swim in a better way. They have to be technically more proficient than the champions of today. And that's why they need to start learning that as early as possible. And it's all again based on basic motor qualities. So in the water, it's just your balance, how you float, how you control your breathing, and also the awareness of your line and everything like that. Then on land, it's the real basic stuff that kids should learn anyways, but at least here in Finland and probably also in most of your countries, uh, the kids are not getting it anymore because it used to come from playful exercise outside, and nowadays people watch TV, and those like balance, coordination, agility, and that kind of stuff doesn't develop to the level that it used to. So we have to actually do that because it's those qualities that then form kind of the movement vocabulary in your brain so you can actually learn uh, the swimming strokes. And again, you need to learn them super efficiently because you need to be better than everybody else in the world. And then if we think, if you're an age group coach and you're coaching people who are 10 to let's say 15 years old, what are the qualities that you want to see from the swimmers that come from the Learn to Swim program? Again, it's the physical competence and the aquatic competence. And that means that you don't really have to train anything else than the skills. All the physical training, all the endurance, speed, everything comes through you teaching them how to swim, how to move in the water, and also kind of how to uh, move on land as well. But at the same breath, I have to say that if they haven't learned that yet, then as an age group coach, you have to teach that. But that's again away from the training that should be done at that period. And then the coaching part of it, we probably all know that, again, if I have a 7, 8 year old kid, the most important thing is to learn the technique, but you have to make that happen in an environment that is as fun as possible because the children, the parents, they have other sports that they can choose from, and you have to make up a reason by the training being so much fun and they're learning so much that they want to come to the pool. And that also starts the psychological process of motivation to actually wanting to become a great swimmer. And that's why, at least if I were to develop like a seasonal plan for learn to swim, it would just say skills and fun for every day, and making sure that all of the kids in the program, or at least most of them, the majority, actually learns them. The way to teach skills is obviously repetition, and repetition is paradoxically usually not so much fun for the kids, but you have to do that and find ways to package it in a fun way, but still in a way that allows you to hit the technical things again and again and again. So I think the worst kind of program for learn to swim is a place where you are, for example, training different strokes every day when they come to the pool. You actually want to stay within freestyle for a few months at a time, or let's say a couple strokes freestyle and backstroke, and just repeat and repeat and repeat until all of them learn the basic skills. Because if you get athletes who are excited about swimming, maybe they don't love it, but they enjoy being in the water. They have high levels of skills, both in the pool and dry land, and also kind of know how to behave at the pool, listen to the coach, look at the timer, the clock, and all of that. Then it's quite easy to become an age group swimmer, or it's quite easy to coach those kind of swimmers. And then you start layering the actual competitive swimming and training. Uh, and the way I would do that is, again, this process of kind of reverse engineering. So if I know that at age 13, I want them to train every day, other than, let's say, Sunday, so 6 sessions a week, and get about 10 hours of swimming and maybe 2 to 4 hours of dry land, then I would just step back. Okay, at 12 years old, we should probably do 5 sessions. At 11, we should do four. At age 10, we should do three. And it really doesn't matter what the session count or the hourly volume at age 13 or 14 is, as long as there is a clear progression. One of the most important things in general in training is that year by year or every half a year, the training must become harder, or you must train more. So you want to avoid, again, swimming every day at age 10, because then again, you don't get these easy kind of developmental things to put into your practice. And the easiest one is just to train more. And the training should probably be very kind of polarized, because again, to learn the skills and to make those skills more robust, you need to do more training. And more is better at this moment, as long as it's again, it's fun and it's not super demanding. So lots of like focused, engaged technical swimming. This is also the sensitive period for speed development. So you should probably do uh, almost every day something fast, but kids at this age don't have their anaerobic systems, their lactate systems developed yet, at least fully. So that it shouldn't be, again, hard. It should be just short sprints aiming to make them faster. And on dryland side, you should make them ready to start like really progressive strength training in the next phase, which is the junior phase. And still, we have to realize that technique will always be the limiting factor, whether they become elites or not. So if they haven't learned to swim, again, better than the elites today at this age, it is very probable that they will never be elites. It doesn't matter what kind of physical training you put on top, because then you are competing against the best swimmers in the world when you become a junior and senior, and most likely those guys know how to swim. So you need to be an excellent coach of technique. Again, doing it in a progressive manner, or in a progressive program where they're swimming more and more all the time, getting those repetitions and making them fast at the same time. And you need to also learn all the skills, because you don't know what will be the speciality of each swimmer. So one of the worst things I see, at least here in Finland again and in the US, is programs that are specializing in let's say 50 freestyle for age 12, because you don't know whether that swimmer is a 400 freestyler or a 1500 freestyle or a butterfly or whatever. So you should look at the program from the lens of individual medley. If you are creating swimmers who are really, really proficient and 200 and 400 IM, again, physiology wise, but especially skill wise, you are setting them up for success. And yeah, and again, it's all about that progression. And we also have to understand, again, I think I'm repeating this too much, that while the technique is the most important thing at this moment as well, the technique will improve through high volumes of training. So the more you can do, as long as it's fun, basically the better it is. But it needs to be fun enough again for them to continue swimming, because they won't become elites if they drop out at age 14 or age 15. And the hard part in swimming is that inherently it's not the most fun sport. It's lots of the same repetitive stuff. So the coaching angle here is, again, how can you make the training as inviting as possible by holding relays, uh, maybe relays and games and stuff inside the practice, so they don't feel like they're working on their endurance, but they're working on something fun. And this is also the time to also start thinking about the psychology and all those skills that they need inside their head to become good, like their confidence. Again, you should create the practices in a way where they feel that they're actually good at their sport. So that's how they start developing the belief in themselves that they can actually do that. They should start developing goals and kind of become part of this swimming family. So the identity is of a swimmer, because on that next level, it is super important. Because once they become juniors, and if we again think about what the junior coach, the coach who is coaching swimmers over 15 years old, what they would want to see is the technique, and especially that they love swimming, because the next phase of training will be hard. And unless you have big goals and you love what you do, then you just won't do it. And if you have went through this kind of a pipeline where you first learn the techniques, the basic skills, then you are training the techniques in kind of a high volume program without forgetting the speed side, then you are ready to really actually train and maximize your physiological qualities. Because, like I said in the early beginning, this is the time when they are growing about age 14 to, let's say, 19, maybe girls a little bit earlier, guys a little bit later. But this is the time to develop the basic qualities that then can be kind of polished into whatever events or strokes they will do. And it's basically your aerobic capacity, your max VO2, the amount of oxygen you can use that you're developing, and also your anaerobic capacity, which is again that speed side of the things. And the easiest way to create the base, to create the aerobic capacity, is again just to increase the training volume. And if you have an ideal situation, the most effective way is to start training more times per week. So adding those morning practices, but not necessarily trying to extend in every practice. And then as you go through the years and you want more and more training time, then you start making those singular training practices longer. You should also start specializing slowly again here, because most likely those swimmers are showing some kind of talent in, let's say, breaststroke. And then obviously you should give them opportunities to train their own stroke, their own strengths. And it's a little bit different, especially nowadays as the 50s are in Olympics. I think if the swimmer looks like they are more of a pure speed type athlete, only swimming the 50 and 100, you can start specializing into that earlier, because the aerobic capacity doesn't really dictate your performance on that. And then on the opposite side, if you have an open water swimmer, you also need to start specializing a little bit earlier, because then speed is not really an important factor in there. Um, and the question, again, at this junior coach's mind should not be like how to make them as fast as possible at competitions at this age. It's obviously important, but it's more of a side product of them developing, again, their basic qualities. Because what you want is to set them up for that adult success. And if they are uh, world level in their both in their endurance and in their speed at that age, basically being able to swim a great 800 freestyle and let's say a 50 fly, they're winning their age group nationals in both of those events, those people will become elite swimmers. Because once they start specializing into something, let's say into a middle distance, they will progress amazingly fast. But if you specialize too early, then you're again using those training strategies too early, and then you have nothing to move on in the next phase. So you are building the best possible athlete at this point, a best possible swimming athlete, building the basic athletic qualities became earlier, but at this point you're trying to make them as good of a swimmer as possible. And for me, again, this is really signified by the range you can swim. And again, if you're a breaststroker, you don't have to be great at 200 backstroke, but you should have some kind of ability there, and not to just train breaststroke, because the time for that is then later once you specialize as an adult. And we also know that most of the swimming events, again, not talking about the pure 50s, are determined by your aerobic qualities. And those will take a long time to develop. It's not a matter of like 2 or 3 years of adding volume and doing threshold. You need to create a progression for the next 4 to 5 years. Again, thinking what kind of volumes, what kind of training they should be able to do at age 18, age 19, and then build like a stepwise progression towards that. But at the same time, you also have to remember that in the end, the quality that also determines quite heavily whether you will be a successful adult swimmer is your speed. I think in the swimming community, we are quite proficient at developing endurance, but we are not really sure how to integrate the speed development. Because if you're not fast enough, even in like a 400 freestyle nowadays, you won't be successful. Like again, if you want to win 400 meters at world championships as a guy, you probably need to have the capacity to swim the 100 freestyle into like 48 low, even 47 high. And you need to be able to do that and to train for that while you are training for the endurance. And of course, on the speed side, your strength development is also one of the basic foundational skills that will help with that. And that is also like infinitely uh, progressible quality. And you should start it early. So I think 14 years old, they should already have a program in place where they're trying to improve their strength levels. But again, it needs to be progressive from the beginning. So if you want them to be able to, let's say, bench press as a guy 150 kilos at age 19 or 130 kilos, whatever that is, then you need to see the pathway from age 14. Okay, how can I make this happen without injuring the athletes in a slow way? So once they are actual adults, they already possess all the qualities that the other elites do without overspending with the specific training. So again, the competitive results are important, but they should not be at the center of your seasonal planning. The center should be to develop the basic physical qualities to adult levels within like 5 years. So, how do you do this practically? Again, you first build the volume and then you build the intensity. And you do that also within one season. So, let's say you have 2 seasons per year, first the fall season, short course season here in Europe, and then long course season during the spring and summer. So, you start and build the volume up, and then you start intensifying. But you also do this within the 5 year period where you're training hard. So you should see that there is more and more training every year. And at the same time, again, safely, not too much, you should be intensifying that training. So again, it's that reverse engineering. If you have an idea what they should be able to do at age 14, and most likely the hours per week are something like 20 to 25 hours of training per week. Your first course of action is then, okay, at age 14, they should probably be at 16 hours per week. And then you start from there. And you do 18 hours the next year, 22 hours the next year, and then you reach that kind of adult type of training. And again, I already told that most of the year you should be training the basic qualities and then intensifying towards the end, and then specializing also more within these years. So you can start still with the normal IAM based program early, and then every year you start adding the percentage of their stroke. So if you know that somebody is very talented in breaststroke, maybe the first year they're in your junior program, they do 15%, 20% breaststroke. Next year, it's going to be 30%, then 40%, then 50%. And as they become adults, it's of course very clear that then almost 100% of the training should, at least the training that's developed to actually improve their competition performance, should be with the stroke that they are aiming for. And again, in here, the thought process should still be, if I'm their coach, what kind of athlete I want to train when they are actual adults. And I want them to be perfect athletes. They need to be fast. Again, they have to have the ability to stay with the big guys in a 50 and 100, even if they're a distance athlete. At the same time, I want them to have superior endurance, for them to have the ability, even if they're sprinters, to swim the 400 and 800. They need to be strong because once they hit adulthood, we won't have time to develop their strength anymore. It needs to be at an adult level when that transition to senior happens. And if we think about like these psychological qualities, I want them to be able to coach themselves. So they are knowledgeable, they have knowledge of swimming, they're self motivated. If for some reason I won't come to the pool, they are so self reliant that they can actually hold the practice for themselves. Of course, they need to love swimming because unless you really, really want to do this, you won't commit for the next phase of training that is to come. And I'm repeating again that they're yet not fully specialized. Because then, when we switch the training to more adult type specialized training, there will be massive improvements because all their foundational qualities are at the level that is needed. And then you just apply, at least in my program, this kind of race pace type, super intense training, and their competitive results will go through the roof. And if you are able to do all of these, then you have basically a perfect athlete. An athlete who's learned to love swimming, who has great basic skills, who has trained their skills to be robust and to be at the higher level than the elites are doing right now, uh, and done that within a high volume program that's really developed their endurance and also their speed capacity. And then they have followed that with this kind of 5 year or 4 year period of very, very heavy training that's not yet still specialized. They are ready to become seniors. And when you are a senior, That's when you start uh, doing the specific training and putting just all into swimming, and all of that together creates the elite performance. That's what creates the Olympian. It is not the program that the seniors are doing, it's the 10 years before that. That's just like the cherry on top of the ice cream, but the actual meat and potatoes of that meal is comes earlier. And that's why I think uh, usually in swimming nations, we might be very good at senior coaching because we are professional coaches and everybody wants to train the elites. But really, where the athletes are done is earlier. They have to have a professional, at least professionally minded. They don't have to be professional, but they really have to have the thirst for knowledge on how to teach swimmers as effectively. Okay, they have to have uh, the want and knowledge of how to develop athletes through the ages, to know when aerobic qualities or speed qualities, when are those developed the best. And if that's done correctly, then you already have those kind of ready-made athletes, and it's easy for the senior coach to take them forward. So that was kind of a basis for this next section, because the senior training for me is the simplest thing. Because if you can just keep the athletes within that pipeline again, from the learn to swim age group to junior to seniors, they're usually ready to commit and motivated to do the work that is necessary to become actual elite and Olympian. But if any step is it hasn't been perfect or well done or done well enough, then there's going to be some missing pieces, and it's really hard to compensate those when they're already adults. So if you don't have the necessary speed, I don't know what you're going to do at age 22, for example, to improve that, at least to the magnitude that was the possibility when they were age 13. If you don't have the endurance, it's going to take years and years and years to develop it as a 20-year-old, while it was relatively easy when they were younger. And of course, the skills, we all know that a 10-year-old kid learns way faster than a 25-year-old athlete. So that's why those things are way more important than what happens at the maximizing performance phase. But if you get athletes to this level, then of course, specificity rules. If you are a breaststroker, I don't see the point of training backstroke anymore. All of your training, or almost all of your training, should have this clear direction towards your performance. And what you're doing at this point is maximizing the capacities that you have by utilizing them. So you should already have the capacities. Of course, you're still training and kind of maintaining those within this phase as well. But really, you're just aiming to get as much out of the engine that the athlete has already developed. And at this point, the training needs to be super individualized, because the only thing that matters is the competitive performance. Nobody cares how you trained. They only care about the results. And people are very different. If you are a sprinter, the training should not be uh, at any way relatable to the training of a distance swimmer. And usually they train in different groups, at least in big countries. And just because of that, because the training is so different. It doesn't need to be that different earlier, but once they become adults, it needs to be individualized for that person's event and that person's stroke and their strengths, their weaknesses, etc., etc. And also the kind of role of the coach changes. These athletes should be self-reliable. They are at the center, and the coach is more of a manager, of course, taking care of the swimming part, but they're also trying to find the right people around the athlete, the right physios, masseurs, doctors, psychologists, nutritionists, whatever that athlete needs, and they together make the athlete better each year. And then if we go into some practical examples, and these are some of them are straight from my book and some that I just kind of made up. So for the Learn to Swim program, I didn't have a practical example because in my mind it's just learning swimming techniques and also having fun week by week by week. Again, and a long-term plan where you are hitting the same technical stuff again and again and again for months and months and months. But as you come to age group level, I at least like to use quite static programs. So instead of having blocks of training where we emphasize different qualities, I like to do those concurrently. So you're training the endurance and you're training the speed every week. And every week, again, still trying to keep it fun is pretty much the same because you're training the basic qualities again. Volume that we do is at low effort. There's no need to do super high levels of like threshold or max VO2, maximal endurance work, because the endurance will improve by just the fact that they're swimming more. And then there's the speed side, and that's the place where at least I can make it more fun for the athletes, so with games and relays and stuff like that. And then I'm also designing the skill progressions in advance. So I should see from my plan what we are going to work this week. And still, it needs to be repeatable. You need to repeat the same stuff. So if we're working on freestyle catch, that is the technical learning for each day for, let's say, 2 weeks at a time. And then we can start working on the power phase, etc. And that is just to make sure that each athlete on that program actually gets the learning that they're supposed to do. And
Coach,
again, naturally, you will improve.
I I
Sorry?
have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, you notice lately there is a lot of issues with regards to the program of Australia. Okay,
Okay.
they before there were a lot of issues where uh, um, the Russian coach and coach what's this Scott Volkers and
Yes.
others. Okay, uh, but now it's been revealed that despite of it that Australia is so successful, second to US, what is it only shows that they're having problems that the athletes are complaining of the program. Okay, so what do you comment on that? Because it relates to what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your
Well,
comment on that?
what is my comment? Well, if we talk about Scott Walker and stuff, of course, you should have clear dividing lines between, well, your behavior as a coach. You are a coach, you are not their friend. And in some cases, the line has clearly been broken. But I think Australians' training, the program is probably okay. Of course, it's going to be more hardcore than what I'm presenting here. But for me, it's more about how the coaches behave and act. Like, especially if you come from Russia, and Finland is next to Russia, so this is the usual way we coach here as well, and it's the kind of an authoritarian type coach who is demanding, let's say, 100% attendance. Okay, my goal as a coach is not to demand anything. My goal is to make the practices so inviting, so much fun for the athletes that they actually want to come. And again, some athletes won't come to every practice, but it's just a fact of life that those people are not committed. They don't like swimming enough to be there every day. But at least I can get 90% of them to commit, and I can do about as much training or hit the right stuff within those practices while I'm making them fun. And and a lot of it comes from how you are behaving as a coach. So if you're yelling at the athletes, if you think about yourself when you were, let's say, 11 years old, it is not a fun environment to be. So you can do the exact same training. You can do 8 kilometer practices, but it's just how you present information and what you write there. Maybe you smile at them, you make a joke. So it's stress-free environment, and it's not so much about the coach's authority. So again, I might be wrong. I've only spent like 3 weeks in Australia looking how they coach, but at least to my impression was that it was good training, but it was still this kind of old school where the coach is at the top, uh, yelling uh, for the swimmers how bad they are and why did you miss that turn, remember the streamline, and using quite vulgar language. But there's a way to run the exact same practice where you are actually giving compliments. So a very practical example is that if you just take a paper and pencil and write down how many times within a 2 hour practice you said something positive about how they're swimming. And then you write down how many times you said something negative. And again, that negative, it needs to be told as well, but it also needs to be balanced again to create more self confidence in the athletes by the positive things you're saying. So maybe they didn't streamline once and you immediately told them about that, but they streamlined 90 times perfectly, but you didn't even notice that. You didn't even tell them how good job they did. And that is an environment that eventually people or most people don't want to be in, because all the people, they want to feel like they're good at what they're doing. They want to laugh, they want to smile, but it doesn't mean that you are not getting the work in. I hope I answered that quite well, because it's also in the US, you basically have two types of coaches. You have the coaches who are super strict, almost like army type, and then you have coaches who are more humanistic, almost like friend like, and they both get results. But I think in the long term, first of all, if you are a professional coach, you have to also think about yourself, because if you are too tough on the kids, it can come and haunt you later in your career. But if you're just a good human being while still demanding high levels of work, then you haven't done anything wrong, because they're all doing it because they want to. And it is your job as a coach to coax them, to create an environment where the athletes actually want to do the work.
Got it, coach. Got it.
Got it? Very long discussion, kind of a tangent there. But yeah, so here's my plan for the age group. And as you can see, it is quite simple. So this would be like a example workout plan for my 11 years olds. So as you can see, we have a stroke emphasis for always 2 weeks, and then we have a secondary stroke emphasis. So all the technical stuff that I'm discussing will be about these strokes within these 2 weeks. And this is just for myself, that I remember that, okay, I don't have to work on fly yet. I just want to make sure the freestyle is perfect and the breaststroke is also in there. I'm working with that speed daily, and usually what we do is just relays. They like that. That's the fun part. And then you can see the volume progression going on all the time. Uh, about the dry land, it's just basic strength and endurance stuff, learning the movements that we will then later on use at the gym, and then doing high reps, making the tissues ready for what is to come at the junior phase. Now, when they arrive the junior phase, then I start to periodicize, but it's still quite simple. I'm just having a very long capacity block where I'm again just doing more and more volume, and also hitting that speed, maybe some speed endurance there as well. And then before important competitions, I intensify and I do this what I call power blocks, where we are actually hitting more of that race pace kind of stuff, again, depending what's their main event. And then within the year and also within that phase, just going from general training to more of that specific stroke. But that's the key word here. I'm trying to progress everything all the time. So if I have two seasons, the second season has to be 10 to 15% more demanding. And then on the next year, again, 10 to 15% more demanding. And you can see that in the volume. So here you have like an 18-week type of a deal. And as you can see, we have 16 weeks of that kind of capacity building, and then only a couple of weeks of that intensifying. Again, you can do that in many, many ways, but here we have 10 training sessions. Most of the training sessions are fairly easy but long, but then there I just kind of inject a little bit of that speed endurance at the middle of the week there. Please don't copy me. Like again, it's all principle based kind of training. So it's you always need to adjust where your swimmers are at. So of course, my swimmers have gone through all that process, so they're ready to train 10 times a week when they're age 16, age 17. And then a senior seasonal plan. I have an example here as well, but here the only goal is to win at competitions. So the plan will be very individualized. And while there was lots of general stuff at the junior phase, when they become seniors, I try to remove everything unnecessary, because the key practices, the high intensity practices that we do, I want them to go again faster or more or harder each time that we do that. And to make that happen, they need to recover between those. And here, if we wanted to progress in the practices themselves at the junior phase, when they're seniors, I don't really try to add volume or try to make the training harder week by week or month by month. What I want to see is that they're swimming faster in their main stroke from month to month to month. And there's like a clear progression. So if I have a 200 breaststroke, is the event that I've had more success in. If I have a 200 breaststroke and he wants to swim 207 at the Olympics or something, then within the year, we must see that he can actually do it. So maybe we start the season from level of 209, and that's the reality that if you can improve 2 seconds per year, then you already won. And then month by month by month, I'm demanding, I'm trying to create the practice plan that I can see in the practice that, yeah, 207 is actually possible, or not only possible, it is actually probable. And as you can see, then the training looks like this. It's race pace all the way. Again, if you were a long distance swimmer, there might be more of threshold aerobic stuff. If you're a sprinter, I would probably not train in the AMs even, just once a day. And it would all be about that event. But this kind of practice, I think, only works if you have created the perfect athlete, or perfect athlete as good as they can be at the early phases. And once you start applying this specific training, I can almost guarantee you that you will see improvements, but those improvements are always kind of limited on what you did before. So I wanted to leave some time for questions. I already got a question from Dennis, but hopefully more on the training side and not from coaches behaving badly. But feel free to ask anything. And if there is a chat function, as there is, you can also put it on the chat, and I can read this.
Do you have suggestions as to what recovery practices should swimmers follow after intense sessions?
I think this is again a broad topic. The most important thing, as we have discussed in earlier lectures on during the summer, is that your nutrition and your sleep are on point. So there is nothing special in any recovery practices if those two things are not in place, because you can't masseuse your way or sauna your way into better recovery if you're sleeping 6 hours a day or at night. So those are like the basic foundational stuff. And on top of that, I think the most important thing is easy movement. Like there needs to be enough, how would you say, contrast between the hard days and the easy days. So if you have nominated some day as to be pure aerobic, easy, so-called recovery practice, you have to keep it that way. If you start pushing it every day, other than again the seniors who already have created the base, you are asking for troubles. And then for seniors, they also need those recovery days, but it's more of a auto-regulative process where you can see that they're starting to break down and they need a couple of days of easy. And for me, I have never found any of the stuff that's sold for us. And believe me, with Olympians, we get lots of stuff for free, like infrared stuff and hyperbaric chambers and all of that stuff. And it really doesn't help almost at all in my mind, or at least it's not better than telling someone to swim 2K easy with the goal of them feeling better after that practice. So not pushing them, not measuring even heart rates or anything, but just letting them move easily, because then you get the blood flow, your breathing rate comes up a bit, and you're basically expending the metabolic wastes that you might have. So unfortunately, I don't think there's anything else that you can do than train properly, have easy days or easy practices, because those help with recovery, and then sleep, and then eat well.
Another question came in about a static program. Could you explain an example? Could you use
So a static program in my language just means that every week is the same. So I've also heard it called like a conjugate program, uh, or yeah, well, conjugate program. It just means that you're trying to hit everything that you want within the season in every practice. So when you're an age grouper, you need to work with that speed. You need to work with basic endurance, maybe some threshold, maybe some speed endurance, maybe some strength. And as you become older, you need, well, you don't need to, but in my mind, you need to block those out. So you will have 4 weeks of like endurance block where you're almost exclusively training that endurance threshold, just basic endurance stuff, and then you move into the next phase. So that's non-static program, because the program changes towards the competitions, and that's usually how people do it. But with the younger kids, the age groupers, because they don't need such a magnified stimulus of one thing to improve, I just keep it the same, and I try to progress everything at the same time. And for me, one of the defining factors, whether you are an age grouper, basically a beginner swimmer, or you are a junior swimmer, basically like an intermediate swimmer, is that those kind of static programs stop working. So as a like a practical example, let's say your 100 freestyle hasn't moved in a year and you've been doing one speed session per week. Then you probably need to amp up the speed for, let's say, 6 weeks and put almost all your efforts into improving that, so that 100 free gets over that plateau. But as long as you don't need to do that, I wouldn't do it. If everything just keeps developing all the time, while you're having like 2 sessions of each of those qualities, then it's static, and there's nothing to really change, because it's very simple, and it's very simple to see whether the swimmers are progressing.
Here's another question. Last week we talked about water polo. Do they have water polo in Finland? And then also, with the question was, what were some of the fun games that you use with the younger kids for a fun, to keep it fun?
There is water polo in Finland. That's pretty much where the swimmers go and stop their career. So there isn't really age group programs or anything, but swimmers who stop swimming, they might go into water polo. Fun games, there's actually a book, and I should really remember what the name of the author is, but I can send the author for you, or maybe you know him, but it's funs, games, and drills, something like that in the pool. And I read that book like 10 years ago. So most of what I use is from there. But of course, relays. So for example, if we are working on turns at a high velocity, we always do that in a relay. So it might be 7 meters in, 7 meters out, and then we do 20 rounds of that or something. Because if I just ask them to do fast turns, there's not the element of competition where they can actually get the feedback whether they want the opponent on that turn. So it's a benefit, and the kids obviously love that kind of relays. Same thing with all the speed with the young kids. Almost exclusively we do relays because they just like it and they give more of themselves in that. Then you can also have, let's say we have an endurance set. I can make it into a fun game by having my cap on, and then I have written different kind of sets for that day. The sets are basically the same, but by just the fact that I'm letting them to choose, so it's almost like a training lottery, it just makes it more fun. Or you can also make, it's kind of hard to explain from here, but you can make word puzzles out of the practices, or you can make incorporate even songs into the practices. Like before the Christmas, you can have 12 days before the Christmas song. If you're American, you would know that song, and we have this in Finland also. And then every set is like in a calendar, and you open that, and then they sing the song, and it's like a surprise for them what's coming next. And it's very, very simple stuff. It's just about making it more exciting than just writing 10 times 1000 on the board, even though it would be physically as good as by having this kind of playful experience attached to that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that the slides will be on the wafsu.org site in a few moments. They're beautiful. Thanks for sharing those. And the book that you mentioned, I believe, is
Bob Steele. Yes.
Bob Steele. Yeah, Games, Gimmicks, Challenges. I have it here. I love it. It's out of print. I think it's available as an ebook though, and I'll try to look for that and put that in the meeting notes. He does have a free little course that is at readswimiska.org. He was a presenter and he offered up his notes there. So there's a nice pointer to that.
If I was a coach developing, I would just go to Google and Google Bob Steele, because also his training system, those protocol sets and everything is just way ahead of its time, because I believe he coached like in the 80s and 90s, and that stuff is still super relevant to this day.
Thanks. I'll make sure he gets that message. Yeah, he's up at the border between USA and Canada in the Western states now, and we occasionally chat with him, and he's online in Facebook.
Oh, I'm a big fan, man. Oh, great.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Eetu, for your good time. Thank you very much for your presentation, and very valuable this session. Thank you very much.
Hope so.
We would like to request a photo